Scary telling.
I've always been a bit of a worrier. I tend to think the worst of situations and am always looking over my shoulder. But lately, something has been off. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. At first, it was just a subtle feeling, a nagging sensation that something wasn't quite right. Shadows seemed to move on their own, and I could hear whispers echoing through the empty halls of my home. I tried to brush it off as a simple case of paranoia, but the feeling persisted and intensified. I began to feel like someone or something was lurking just beneath the surface of my reality, watching my every move. I tried to seek help, but no one believed me. My family and friends dismissed my claims as the ramblings of a madman, telling me that I was just working myself up over nothing. But I knew that something wasn't right. I started to become more and more isolated, avoiding social situations and staying inside my home as much as possible. As time passed, the feeling intensified and I started to lose sleep. I would wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, and the feeling of being watched would be overwhelming. I started to see things out of the corner of my eye, movement where there shouldn't be any, and whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. It was like something was trying to communicate with me, but I couldn't understand what it was saying. The worst part was the sense of isolation. I felt like I was cut off from the rest of the world, like I was living in my own personal bubble. No one could understand what I was going through, and I felt like I was slowly losing my mind. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, the feeling of being watched became my constant companion. I couldn't escape it, no matter how hard I tried. And deep down, I knew that things were only going to get worse. As the feeling of being watched persisted, I started to retreat further and further into myself. Sleep became a luxury that I couldn't afford, as the nightmares that plagued me were far worse than anything I could experience in waking life. My mind became consumed with memories of a single childhood summer, a time that I had always thought of as happy and carefree. But as the memories flooded back, they became distorted and twisted, more like nightmares than fond recollections. I could see myself as a child, playing in the yard with my friends, but the colors were off, and everything seemed to be tinged with darkness. I could hear the laughter and the chatter, but underneath it all was an underlying sense of dread, a feeling that something was waiting just beyond the horizon. At first, I tried to push the memories away, but they persisted, invading my waking thoughts and my nightmares. I started to see flashes of things that I couldn't explain, like a shadow that moved on its own or a whisper that seemed to come from inside my head. The more I tried to fight it, the worse it got. The nightmares became more vivid, and the memories became more distorted. I felt like I was being pulled under, drowning in a sea of my own fears and anxieties. The worst part was the feeling of isolation. I tried to reach out to friends and family, but they didn't understand what I was going through. They dismissed my claims as the ramblings of a madman, telling me that I needed to get help. But the help that I needed was beyond their comprehension. I was trapped in a world that was slowly unraveling, with no escape in sight. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, the line between my surface life and submerged life began to blur. The memories of the summer became more vivid, and the nightmares became more real. I started to lose touch with reality, unable to distinguish between what was real and what was just a figment of my imagination. And deep down, I knew that things were only going to get worse. Despite my best efforts to push away the memories and nightmares that plagued me, they persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. The feeling of being watched became more intense, and the whispers grew louder, almost as if they were trying to tell me something. One day, I reached a point of maximum happiness in my surface life. I had just received a promotion at work, and my family was doing well. For a brief moment, everything seemed perfect. But that moment was short-lived. I found myself standing at a crossroads in a yellow wood, facing a difficult decision. I didn't know what the right choice was, but I knew that whatever I chose would have consequences. In a moment of indecision, I made the wrong choice. I felt something shift, as if the universe had tilted slightly on its axis. And then everything went black. When I woke up, I was no longer in my home. I was standing in the middle of a desert, the sun beating down on me with a ferocity that I had never felt before. I was surrounded by sand dunes, stretching out as far as the eye could see. At first, I thought that it was just another nightmare, another twist in the distorted memories that plagued me. But as I looked around, I realized that this was no dream. This was real. I was trapped in a living hell, consumed by the unrelenting heat of the summer that had once haunted me. The sky was a deep shade of red, and the sun seemed to hang low in the sky, a swollen orb that radiated heat in every direction. The sand was hot beneath my feet, and I could feel the heat seeping into my skin, boiling my blood from the inside out. I was trapped in a perpetual state of suffering, unable to break free. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, I realized that this was my new reality. I was trapped in the submerged life of my own personal nightmare, doomed to suffer for eternity. I could hear the whispers more clearly now, as if they were guiding me, telling me that this was where I was meant to be. I didn't know what I had done to deserve this, but I knew that I could never go back. The worst part was the feeling of regret. I knew that I had made the wrong choice, that I had taken the path that led me to this living hell. And I knew that there was no going back. As the unrelenting heat of the summer consumed me, I began to understand the true nature of existence. We are all born into time and destined to live our lives in a constant state of imperfection and chaos. But here, in the submerged life of my personal nightmare, time did not exist. I was trapped in an eternal summer where the heat was intense and pain was the only constant. The sand was hot beneath my feet, and I could feel it searing my skin. My body was covered in blisters, and I could feel them popping, leaving me exposed and vulnerable. My throat was dry, and my tongue felt like sandpaper. Every breath was a struggle, and every movement was agony. I could hear the whispers more clearly now, and I realized that they were coming from within me. They were my own thoughts, my own fears, and my own anxieties, amplified and twisted by the unrelenting heat of the summer. I tried to hold onto my sanity, but it slipped away from me, like sand slipping through my fingers. I could feel myself losing touch with reality, sinking deeper and deeper into the submerged life of my personal nightmare. I realized that I was not alone. There were others here with me, trapped in their own personal hells. I could hear their screams, their cries of agony, and their pleas for mercy. But there was no mercy here, only pain and suffering. I tried to hold on to hope, but it was like trying to catch a ray of light in a darkened room. The heat was relentless, unyielding, and all-consuming. I was trapped here, doomed to suffer for eternity, with no hope of escape. The worst part was the realization that this was my own doing. I had made the wrong choice, and now I was paying the price. I had taken the path that led me to this living hell, and there was no going back. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, I could feel myself changing, becoming something else entirely. My skin was peeling away like a fruit's, leaving me exposed and raw. My thoughts were becoming muddled, twisted, and distorted, like the memories of my childhood summer. I knew that I was trapped here, in this endless cycle of pain and suffering, and that there was no escape. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and more terrifying, until they were all that I could hear. And deep down, I knew that this was my new reality, that I was doomed to suffer for eternity in the submerged life of my own personal nightmare. As the unrelenting heat of the summer continued to consume me, I knew that my time was running out. I could feel myself slipping away, my thoughts becoming more and more distorted, and my body breaking down. I had no idea how much time had passed since I first arrived in this living hell, but it felt like an eternity. I was trapped in a perpetual state of suffering with no hope of escape. I could feel myself boiling and bursting, my skin peeling away like a fruit's, leaving me exposed and vulnerable. Every breath was a struggle, and every movement was agony. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The universe forgot, effacing my surface existence, and all that remained was the summer. I was wholly submerged in the unrelenting heat, my body boiled and burst, and my consciousness shattered into a million pieces. I was nothing, no longer bound by time or space, but trapped in the essence of a single childhood summer, condensed into a single impression, felt always, forever. The whispers were gone, replaced by a profound silence, broken only by the sound of my own breathing. I had no idea how long I had been trapped in this state, but it felt like an eternity. I realized that this was the end of my existence, that I had ceased to be, and that all that remained was the summer. The unrelenting heat was still there, but it no longer caused me pain or suffering. I was free, in a way that I had never been before. I was no longer bound by the constraints of my surface existence, but I was trapped in the essence of a single childhood summer, an idealized version of the past that had never truly existed. And as I drifted away into nothingness, I knew that this was where I belonged, that I had found my place in the endless summer.